There is a concept within physics called superdeterminism, which is pretty much a smarty pants way of restating and finally figuring out what mankind has always known, that there is a such thing as fate, there is a such thing as destiny. But this concept, it's always in conflict with this deeply entrenched belief that we have, at least within the West, called free will. We have a love affair with this idea. And according to our logic, these two concepts cannot coexist: fate and free will, destiny and decision. We cannot reconcile these two things, but I want to talk about how that's not actually the case. These two concepts aren't contradictory. You can have free will and a destiny. And the way that you can see through this apparent paradox is the same way that you can see through any paradox, and that is by adding more context. You simply need to look at destiny and see what its antithesis is. What is the thing that undoes it? What is the thing that dissolves destiny? And that is simply knowledge, information. So free will isn't the opposite of fate, but rather it is the byproduct of its opposite, which is ignorance. Free will is born from ignorance. And what this free will actually is, we kind of get it confused. It's a confusion of position. Free will is the ability to decide, not to create. You get to decide which route you will take within reality, but you don't get to create reality itself. That is something far beyond mammal powers to be able to do. You can think of it as this, that there is an infinite amount of ways to reach a single point, and you get to decide which one you will take. You can give up and say everything is meaningless, and that's the way that it always would have been. You can immediately after decide that you're going to grab life by the horns, and that's the way that it always would have been. It's almost as if you can imagine some sort of deity, whatever decision you make, it gets to come in afterwards and write it in the script later. That's because there is no later. There is no before. It's only due to the fact that we occupy this 3D perspective moving along this axis of time that the nature of our logic and understanding, we have to wait to find things out. But in actuality, reality doesn't really work like this. We are sort of experiencing a small portion of it. And it is via us only experiencing a small portion of it. This is where free will comes from. It is the lack of information, the lack of knowledge and certainty that gives birth to the ability to decide. And this simultaneously gives birth to what I actually want to talk about in this video, because if you clicked on this video, I'm sure you have watched plenty of people talk about free will and other concepts similar to this. But it is via this restriction of knowledge, this tiny sliver of reality that we are able to experience. It simultaneously gives birth to the mystery, or what's commonly called the other. And what the other is, some people refer to it as God. Perhaps some sort of philosopher would refer to it as the truth. I refer to it as the mystery. You can think of it as some sort of singularity. And within this singularity, everything makes complete and perfect sense. All things are possible. Anything can be, anything can happen at any moment. You can divide by zero and have it make complete and perfect sense. And what all of reality is, it is a dissension from this position. And it is via this dissension that we have all of these various unknowns. And we are all sort of putting puzzle pieces together, trying to get back to the other. And what free will is, you can sort of think of it as some sort of descent from a superposition that, due to its infinite nature, its unfathomable nature, there are an endless amount of roads or paths you can take, but inevitably, all roads lead back to it. There is no escaping it. And free will is simply the ability to decide which road you're going to take. And for us within this 3D plane, it appears that time is this unknown that we cannot see through. We sort of have to wait to find things out and make decisions based on time. But if you think about if you're able to perceive in 4D and you can sort of see through time, then what would be the unknown? I've always theorized that perhaps if you were some sort of 4D perceiver, that thoughts would be this black box that you can't see into, that if you were some sort of entity that can perceive in 4D, that we would look like characters in a story, but the reasons why we do the things that we do would be a mystery. Here within this plane, I can sort of tell you what I'm thinking, but if you are in some other plane, unable to really interact, you would be able to see everything that I'm going to do and not know why. Am I going to save the girl because I feel guilty? Am I going to save the girl because I want to be a hero? All of this would be some sort of wild card, and we sort of see this reflected in our mythology, even in our art. I believe it was in this recent movie Dune, where you have these oracles that can see into the future, but it is the inner workings of the hero's heart that is the wild card. And if you want to call these things dimensions, planes, each one of these has its own little black box, its own unknown that it cannot see through. And this creates the other, the mystery. And as I stated before, within this truth, if you want to call it that, anything is possible. It can do anything. You can divide by zero. But this would mean that it is completely irrational, and that is what I ultimately believe. I think our desire to try and force reality to be logical is more akin to a cope than anything else. And this thing we are all experiencing called reality, I believe that what's actually going on is something closer to a extremely far out Dr. Seuss book than anything else. And what this mystery or this truth actually is, perhaps H.P. Lovecraft would call it horrors beyond human comprehension. Someone who believes in God would call it some sort of unfathomable glory. But perhaps the best way we can understand it on this 3D plane is strange. How strange? Imagine if you right now got launched into the sun, how overwhelming that would be. This is a strangeness on a magnitude that we cannot fathom. You can think of it simply as if you took your iPhone right now and jumped 2,000 years in the past, you would blow everybody's minds. Even without your iPhone, just the things that you know, what you are, how you look, you would be so strange that you would break people's brains. Now imagine this on some sort of unfathomable scale. You can take it a step further and say, according to the theory of evolution, Darwinism, we are all mutants. Life began with some sort of, single DNA, and over all of these millions and millions of years, this single DNA began to mutate and change. And if you could go back to this original DNA strand and show it everything that it eventually became, it would be ludicrous. It would think that this is what I am, this is what I became. And what this singularity that we are all heading towards is like, it is everything that completes you. It is everything that scares you. Perhaps it is some sort of something similar to the shadow that Carl Jung talks about. It is the other. And when you arrive there, you will see how everything makes complete and perfect sense. There is no such thing as paradoxes. And what everything on all planes, on all levels, what everything is doing is inching towards it. And I hesitate to use this term towards because I don't even think direction has meaning in this context. It's like, more accurately, I could say we are all experiencing it, or it is experiencing us. It is some sort of meta awareness that is transpiring because it is experience. And this is why reality has this fractal-like nature. It's kind of like when you are a child, you never understood your parents. And it isn't until you have children that you are able to become your parents. And your child doesn't understand you until it becomes you. And there is this infinite unfolding that is always occurring within different contexts. The molecules are doing it. The plants are doing it. You are doing it. The entities within your dreams are doing it. All things, reality itself is doing it, and it will continue to unfold until it reaches its final becoming, where all context is added and everything makes complete and perfect sense. It's kind of like how to us, all of the known parts of history make sense to us. This led to that, which led to this, which led to that. But the future doesn't make sense. It's unpredictable. It isn't until you reach the end of it that everything that came before it makes sense. But what if this end is everything? You are an echo of what preceded you and a shadow of what precedes you. And this ultimately forms some sort of fractalized pattern. And when you become aware of this, you see that everything that you see is metaphor. All of reality is some sort of metaphor, a metaphor for a meaning that we just simply can't handle in this form. It's kind of like the expression, you can't handle the truth. It's true. But the important part is to realize that this isn't all just happening for no reason. And based on the patterns, the thing that appears to be the most important thing for at least the human experience is the way that you feel. It appears that the entire purpose of this is for you to feel something. At the end of the day, that is the most important thing to us all, the way that we feel. I talk about this in my previous video, Consciousness Makes Memories Out of Emotions, that everything that we experience, that appears to be the end facility. The thing that everything is trying to facilitate is to make you feel something. Because feeling is a direct response to meaning. Meaning and feeling are like these mirrored images. It's very tricky to explain. And this flies in the face of the current rhetoric that is anti-feeling, this want to be stoic type of rhetoric. But the human experience is primarily feeling. It's kind of how people believe that consciousness is some sort of brain simulation. Feeling does not have to be a requirement for a simulation to work. Why does something hurt if you burn your skin, for example? It could work the same way any other computer system works. Once a certain temperature threshold is reached, it can induce a response. But the fact that you have to feel it first, it says something. And the feelings that you allow to lead your decision making, lead your life, ultimately winds up becoming the character that you play. These archetypal characters. If you decide to repress the way that you feel in order to accomplish some goal, that was a way that you felt, that you acted out. If you decide that you want to be a simpleton and ignorance is bliss, that is a feeling that you are acting out. And we all ultimately play characters in this story. But perhaps that is the subject of another video. I'm going to end things here. This video was a bit more philosophical in nature and perhaps a bit more poetic, but I do think that it is important for us to realize the bigger picture. So like the video, comment and subscribe to the channel. I have a Patreon where all of your support keeps this whole thing going. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day.